Hey everybody, another season at the fort started. This weekend will be Memorial Day as I record this. So this year, I'm going to get more into the details. I'll still take the full event photographs, make sure I get pictures of the crowds and things like that. But I want to get into more of the details too, because they do so much, and I've said this before, they do so much work making sure that the buttons are right, that the uniforms are right. And while I catch those at the same time that I get a normal picture of everybody, I don't really get down to the detail level, right? You can see the buttons. You can expand the picture, right? You can zoom it in to see the button, but that's not the same. I've got lenses that I can stand away and I can actually zoom in on the buttons or the bags or any of their accoutrements that they've got. I think I'm going to do more of that this year. I also, when I talk about details, there's more to running the fort than the reenactors. There's all the people behind the scenes and all the people who run the store and everything that's done that helps bring money into the fort to help to support the efforts of the fort. So there's an entire gift shop, if you will, that's there, heavy on books and clothing, a couple little knickknacks here and there. Plus, there's the fort restaurant. And it's kind of funny because for years I would go to the fort and not eat in the restaurant, because I figured it was probably, well, I'd had experience at some of the other attractions, shall we say, in New York, where it was much more expensive to eat at the venue than it was to just drive a little bit and eat outside of the venue. In this case, that's not the case. In fact, they're very reasonably priced there. Service is great. I just wish they had more space and more help. Let me be honest there. If they had more space, they would need to have more bodies. But I've been there some days when it is absolutely packed and absolutely packed for hours on end. So, good on them that they can keep up with that. But having more area to get around would also be good too, because people are kind of packed in at the events. But that said, to me, that is a detail, right? That is a detail that a lot of people, when they go to the fort, don't necessarily recognize. And I think it's also something that may or may not be recognized by the donors to the fort, right? When they donate to the fort, they're thinking, well, I'm donating and they've got a museum and I'm donating to so that they can expand their collection, or I'm donating to expand their research, because there's a whole crew of research people that I don't even see when I'm at the fort. Or I'm donating it for, the reenactings that's going on, or they did some specific ones for gunpowder, because if you go to any of the reenactments, they fire the muskets, they fire the cannon, they need gunpowder for that stuff. You may not also know, as you see the tailors working there's usually a couple of tailors working at all times. You may not know that they're the ones actually making and repairing all the uniforms that you see, right? Being as detailed as possible and as accurate as possible. And that's a lot of work that, honestly, I don't think gets seen or recognized. When people think of the fort, you're not thinking about possibly more than just the reenactments, the events that you're seeing, and not everything else that went into it. Or you might be thinking of the museum, but you may not be thinking of the people that are there to answer your questions. You may not be thinking about what it took to get those things all set up. You may not be thinking about all of the research that went into every item that's in the collection, or any of the research that went into any of the reenactments. They don't just decide that they're going to have a bunch of people out shooting. They actually go and find out what is the drill that would have been done at that time. How would they have done things? What weaponry would they have used? What would it have looked like? How would they have loaded it? What is the process that they would have done to be on patrol? What is the process that they would have followed basically to do laundry, make food? How would they serve the food? Where would they eat the food? All of that stuff. And again, how are the uniforms made? Who's making the uniforms? Who's making the shoes? Who's resoling the shoes? Who's repairing the weaponry? Who's repairing the outfits? The weapons were given to them in good order if they didn't bring their own, and they were responsible for that weapon. Should something happen to the weapon or it get damaged, it was up to the soldier's responsibility to get it taken care of. When it was turned back in, it needed to be turned back in the same condition it was sent out, minus a little wear and tear, I'm sure, but in a good working condition. Otherwise, they would have to pay for the weapon. So, all of that research is in the background. And then there's the whole issue of the Pell family themselves, who went to the fort, who saw this broken down stone structure, figured that a lot of the stone had been stolen or reallocated to someplace else, which may or may not have been the case. And they decided to refurbish the fort and bring it back to life. And they had an inn, and there was a rail line that came through, so they could actually house people there. So you could stay there and then go to the fort. And like I said, the rail line came right through, so they could just pop right in on their way to someplace else too, and just stop there, spend a day there, and then head on up toward Canada or head down from Canada. But all of that work that they did missed one piece, and that was it was not a stone fort. And that's why I say it may or may not be that the stuff was being removed. So the assumption was, because they found stone, that it must have been a stone fort. In fact, it would have been a wooden fort, a la Fort William Henry, with wooden walls and wooden barracks. Except the barracks got burned down, so they decided to redo the barracks in stone. So the stone that they found was to protect themselves from a soldier burning the place back down again, because I believe that's what happened the first time. A soldier had an accidental fire, took the place down. And maybe the two triangular pieces that are outriders to the fort, which would have been further away from the fort than as set up right now, those would have been probably stone as well. Could have been wood, but they were probably more stone-like because they were used to store things. So the walls, instead of being stone the way they are now, would have been wood. So it's quite possible that some of the stone was actually removed. It's also possible that the assumption being that the walls were going to be of stone, they thought there would be more stone there, obviously necessary for putting the walls up. But again, it's all the details, right? They have workmen on the site right now repairing the walls, getting into the details of the upkeep of the fort. All right. The walls, just like any mortared structure, when they get water in there and it freezes in the winter, is going to start working its way against the mortar that's in there. It's working its way against the bindings that hold the stones together until such time as they give. The structures that were in place to make the water come off the walls, because remember, if it were stone back in the day, and you had a stone platform, water is going to sit on that stone platform unless you've got a way to get it out. A good example of how they used to handle that, if you're in Bennington, I don't know if it's open or not yet. The old Southern Vermont College was a castle that had been brought over. Now, the reason I say the old Southern Vermont College is being turned into a bed and breakfast, but I don't know if it's open or not yet. I haven't heard anything more about it. But they had like gargoyle heads and stonework, so that if the water built up on the deck, it had a drain that it came out of. Not only did it come out of the gargoyle head, but if you look on the ground beneath it, the people putting the castle was moved over, but the people building the castle back up here realized, and it might have been with the original as well, that water coming out of these mouths are going to impact on the ground, and they're going to start to take the ground apart. Well, that's unacceptable, right? You don't want to keep redoing your landscaping. So there was stone mounted beneath these heads, so that when the water came out, it landed on stone, and then from there dispersed into the ground. So you weren't getting the pounding of the water directly on the ground, eating away at the ground. Again, it's a detail of the castle, both the stone underneath as well as the gargoyle heads that are there. And it's something that some people don't always see or always would capture, right? They might capture that gargoyle head because it looks cool. Might be completely forgetting why it's there, or not paying attention to why it's there. It's not there as decoration. It literally is there as a spigot for the water building up on the platform that it's attached to. Because again, that was all stonework and tile, and so the water's got to go somewhere. It's just going to pool up after all, it's just going to pool up as it rains. And if it pools up too much, because it was not an open deck, right? Just like the fort's not an open deck. There's walls on both sides. The water can build up. And if it builds up, then where's it going to go? Except into the building that's attached to it. Or in the case of the fort, down the ramps into the main grounds where they have to assemble. And you don't want that being mud. So you want ways of the water exiting the fort in such a way that it's not going to impact the usability of the fort. You're going to get enough mud in the courtyard anyway. In a rainstorm, you don't need additional rain from all of the surroundings pouring into it as well. But again, from a photography standpoint, there's a lot of these details. There's a lot of intricacies into everything that's going on. And that's what's important to capture. It's important to capture the full picture, if you will, of what's going on. And that's just part of it. So that's what I got for you guys this week. I will talk to you all next week.